Okay, I'm here with Jack. Jack is a 1.5-year-old Aussie mix. And in this video, I'm going to go over how you can teach your dog two things. How to teach your dog to go in or out of a room, and also how to enforce an invisible boundary without using any punishment-based methods. I'm going to use kind of how dogs communicate with each other. Now, the first thing you want to do is you want to teach your dog to leave a room. So let's say I wanted Jack to leave this room. What I want to do is I want to put things in context. A lot of times, that I'm going to ignore. These are really good treats. Now, a lot of us would put things out of context. So like right there, Jack jumped up on me. And what a lot of us do is we say off. Well, when I hear the word off is when I'm jumping up on someone. So clearly the word off means jump up on the human. It's the opposite of what we intend. So for the dogs, what we want to do is we want to put things in context. Now, to answer that question real quick, if a dog just jump up at me, what I do is I cross my arms and I freeze and I look up and I become as boring as possible. Any movement or interaction or correction for the dog is validated. So I turn my back or I knee him, I don't like doing that. Or any of these, oh look, he went to his dog bed, Zanzibar. We just taught him how to do that. And he did that because he knows that that's something positive that we want. So basically the dog jumps up, and this is kind of an illustration of that same concept. So if he jumps up on me, what happens is I freeze and become boring. And then I wait for him to get off on his own. And when he just dismounts, if I pet him for the off, he's going to jump back up to get that on. So once he jumps down on his own, because I become boring, then I tell him to sit or to lay down. So I'm telling him a desirable action that will get my attention. So what I'm saying is when you jump up on the human, they become boring and disengage with you. As soon as you do things they like, they reward you. So getting back to what I originally came to talk about in this one is how to leave the room. So I'm going to use the word out as the command word. You can say any word you want. So I'm going to basically, I can show him that I have the treat. I'm going to throw the treat out of the room. And I'm going to say the word out when he licks up the treat. Now, anytime you give a treat, the treat should go in their mouth first. They should hear the command word after, and only the command word. Not good out, out. So he's going to come back in, show him I have another treat. I want him to vacate that room completely. There we go. And I throw it about 2 feet in there. That's not a great example because he's in and out. So I didn't say the command word there. Jack. Out. So what I'm doing is putting in context. Out means to leave the room. So what I'd have you do is, now we're in a mansion right now. You don't understand how big this place is. So what you want to do is go to every room in your house and I usually do this with 2 treats. Now this is the freeze-dried beef liver, so I'm breaking them into bits. So I do 2 out. So I do out, and I'm luring him out. You don't have to usually come back to it. Out, and then I would go to the next doorway. So maybe around the couch, in the kitchen, the laundry room, the bedroom, the billiards room, the den, the study, all the different rooms in the house. You can also do this. So be out there, throw the treat out there and say out. And then the next stage, after I've done all of the rooms in the house, all the doorways and portals, and going around, like around the carpet around a table, could be out going this way. And if it's like, if it is, let's say there's a table here, and this is not disguised, and there's a rug around the table, I would throw it this way, this way, this way, this way. So you throw it all different directions. So out just means vacate the area in any particular direction. So once I've done all of them, I do 2 outs. Then what I do is I go in the room and I throw it this way, and I'd say living for living room. Throw one in the kitchen, then I go to the kitchen. Throw one in and say kitchen, dining, billiards, study, whatever it is, balcony. So now I have a command word to tell the dog to leave a room or to go to a room. Now after you do this enough, what you'll be able to say is out, out. So you'll tell the dog what to do first, then you'll pay them and reward them for doing it. But at first, we're using the lure just to throw it out to teach the dog to leave the room. So I always want to teach the dog the voluntary or the command word first so they can voluntarily commend it. So let's say that I don't want him to be in the bedroom. So I'm going to have the camera shift up and I'm going to walk back here and he's here. So what I'm going to do is for dogs front facing, your hips, whatever direction your hips are pointing at is kind of where your authority level goes. Now he's a herding dog, so I'm going to use a little bit of the tactics that he uses when he's herding prey, or not prey, whatever he's in charge of. So Jack comes over here. So I'm going to approach him and I'm going to walk directly towards him. And I'm going to try to not let him get behind me. Now the door doesn't close here because there's a giant pool table over here. So what I'm doing is I'm reverse herding him and I'm walking towards him. Now this is the boundary that I want to enforce, the invisible boundary. So I'm going to wait for him to stop moving, and I take 1 step backwards, and I pause. If he stays stationary, I take another step backwards, and I pause. And I would prefer to wait for the dog to look at me. And I take another step backwards. So I start marching towards him. I use a hissing sound like a cat Cesar Millan uses this. I don't use Cesar Millan tactics. I'm force-free, but cats, skunks, snakes, deer, scorpions, all sorts of animals make hissing sound. That's my way of saying no. And he didn't vacate it, so I started marching towards him. My authority, remember, goes whatever direction my hips are going towards. So let's say that Jack was right here, and I start marching at him, and he vacates the area. I'd stop here. This is kind of like a game of tag. Anything outside this doorway is base. So I'm going to match him. So if he stays there, I would go all the way, and I would stop enforcing at the line. And then I would wait for the dog to stop moving. When he stops moving, I take one step backwards like this, and I pause. Pausing between steps tells the dog, I'm not just meandering, I'm communicating. Now what you're going to do is you're going to walk towards him, he vacates it, wait for him to stop moving, take one step backwards, pause. If he stays stationary, take another step backwards. He's probably going forward, so you rush forward. So you're going to do, at first, you're going to do a lot of this back and forth. But eventually you just pause, and you can go this direction or that direction. And so eventually he's going to sit or lie down. Don't tell him to sit or lie down. When he sits or lies down, then I can kind of lower my guard a little bit. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you, because he's an Aussie, and a lot of dogs, especially herding breeds, have a tendency to develop separation anxiety. Even though he doesn't have it now, he might develop it later. What it is a lack of practice being alone. So a wonderful thing to do would be to teach him to go in, to go out there. I take a step back, and then step back this way, and eventually lay on my bed, read a little bit of my book with Jack outside the room. He can still see you. He's not at 0 to 100%, which is usually I'm 100% with my human, then they leave and I go to 0. No, we have something in between now. This is like 50%. I'm there with her, I can see her there, but I'm not right on top of her. And that helps me develop a little bit more confidence. Now, one of the things Jack's guardian does is his punishment, and this is about the worst punishment there is for a dog, is to be excluded from the group. In the dog world, they're very social creatures, so one of the worst punishment is to be taken that away from you. So if he is being a nuisance, one of the things his guardian does is puts him in here and she closes the door. Well, I'm guessing that I didn't know scratches on the door, but a lot of times Jack might protest or bark or whine and howl and be frustrated. Well, if I close the door, then the door is the authority figure. One of the things Jack does is he's a demand barker. So we need his guardian to start demonstrating authority and him developing self-restraint, and he has to do that through self-control exercises. So if we put him in here and tell him he's got to stay, at this point I would be walking this direction. I'd stop and take a step backwards here. Jack comes up, I come back. Jack's stationary, I take a step back and I pause. And then again, I pause. And eventually I'm going to move further and further away, and I would practice this when nobody's here, when he's not in trouble. So when we want dogs to develop things, we want to practice in the easiest version possible, and this is the easiest version. You're just asking me to sit in here for no reason? Sure. And so then when we actually have guests over, and if he is being a nuisance, and we do want him to do this, he understands this concept. We practice it in an easier situation, not when there's a house full of people that he thinks he's here to protect. So what I'd like you to do is practice the out command. Usually I do like 2 outs and then 1 in, and I multiply it times however many areas I'm going to do it. And I'd like you to do, since you have a ton here, but you practice maybe, with about 25, 30 treats a day, and with the outs, and then 1 in for each one. And after a while, you should just be able, if you're watching TV, every once in a while, just say out, and he runs in here, and then just throw a treat over to him. So again, we're doing it not as always a punishment. So out just sometimes means come in here. He will interpret, if you're all in there and he's got to be in here, he will understand that it's kind of a dressing down a little bit as a dog thing. But again, we want to set him up for success by teaching it to him earlier. And now he's just hanging out by his guardian. Jack, come. You gonna come this way? Yeah, I thought you'd probably go over the couch. Come here, Jack. You can get it, buddy, you can get it. He's like, this is a trick. Well, this is Jack, or this is Jack's back, and I'm David, and these are some tips and tricks on how you can teach your dog to respect an invisible boundary, as well as a bonus of how to teach him to leave a room.